A timeline of Derby County's recent disasters. Think your club is a shambles right now? Spare a thought for fans of Derby County. The Rams have spent years threatening to finally break back into the Premier League since their relegation in 2008, a season which gleaned just one win and a record low points tally of 11 by the way, and despite 4 attempts at promotion via the playoffs they still find themselves in the championship. Still, they should probably be glad of that, to be honest, considering they could, and quite possibly should, be in League One right now, after years of terrible decision-making by both the club's hierarchy and squad members left them in an absolute mess. If you've forgotten just how bad the last few years have been for Derby County, treat yourself to a little refresher of arguably the most turbulent few years a single football club has ever experienced. Arguably the catalyst for Derby's woes was owner Mel Morris's decision to buy Pride Park back in June 2018. The move was intended to help balance the books as Morris looked to, for want of a better word, fudge his club's accounts. The purchase meant Derby's bank balance was made healthier by the sum of £80 million, meaning they'd technically be complying with FFP, financial fair play, rules. You probably don't need to be a footballing expert to work out that the move didn't go down too well with the rest of the clubs in the championship, and it eventually came back to bite them in the A. How could we forget the infamous Spygate saga? Leeds boss Marcelo Bielsa was accused of spying on Derby County's training sessions prior to their meeting in January 2019. Well, we say he was accused. One of his staff members was actually caught at the Rams training complex, and the Leeds manager openly admitted to spying on other sides. While the whole debacle obviously reflected worse on Leeds than it did Derby, it just caused the Rams a load of unnecessary publicity. Derby would get their own back on Leeds as they came from behind to knock Bielsa's side out of the playoff semi-final later that season, but their wait for promotion to the Premier League would go on. Frank Lampard's side suffered the agony of playoff final heartbreak as they were beaten 2-1 by Aston Villa at Wembley. Still, it's not like Derby should definitely have won the game given their squad was full of loanees who would go on to secure big money moves or win the Champions League in just a few seasons' time. Right, Derby had come so close to booking their place in the Premier League, all they needed to do was add a few more decent players, and surely next season would be their time, and then their manager left. The opportunity to manage Chelsea was always going to prove too tempting for Lampard to stick around at Pride Park, and the rookie boss departed the club after just 1 year in the job. Time to rebuild once again. Signing a player like Wayne Rooney should hardly be on a list of disasters for a championship club, but once again Derby were accused of further dodgy dealings. The former England captain wouldn't officially move to Pride Park until January 2020, but in August 2019 it was revealed Derby had reached an agreement to bring him to the club. How had they possibly been able to afford such a high-profile player? The move had been funded by the club's sponsors, obviously. Rooney was handed the number 32 shirt upon his arrival, a decision which had nothing to do with the fact the club are sponsored by 32 Red, and they paid for the whole thing. Derby's 2019-20 season looked like being a bit of a disaster after new boss Philip Cocu led his team to just 1 win in their opening 8 league games, but at least things had calmed down off the pitch. Not for long they hadn't. Richard Keogh, Mason Bennett and Tom Lawrence were involved in a car crash, with the former left unconscious as his teammates fled the scene. Bennett and Lawrence were later banned from driving, while Keogh was sacked by the club after suffering an injury during the crash which would keep him out for 12 months. And Lawrence has just been named club captain by the way. Having managed to get their season back on track after a rocky start, Cocu's men looked well set to secure a place in the playoffs with just 6 games of the season remaining. However, they went on a shocking end-of-season run and failed to pick up a win in any of their next 5 outings, subsequently missing out on a place in the top 6 by 6 points. Yet another season in the second tier was confirmed. Cocu was sacked just a few months into the 2020-21 campaign, with Derby notching just 1 win from their first 15 league outings. The club decided to appoint just about every person who'd ever stepped foot inside Pride Park as interim boss, with Rooney, Liam Roseneyer, Shay Given and Justin Walker handed the reins. Eventually Rooney was given the job, much to the dismay of Roseneyer, if reports are to be believed. Back to off-field turmoil now. And having finally managed to pick up a couple of wins, the Derby players were handsomely rewarded by not getting paid. The club's hierarchy promised the situation would be resolved and the players would be paid in full, yet ongoing cash flow problems meant owner Morris was unable to fulfill said promise. Derby's financial woes didn't look like ending anytime soon, with Morris unable to secure outside investment and a takeover of the club not looking likely. Seems a bit over the top to be celebrating survival in the car park, but given the years they'd endured we can't really begrudge them. Derby somehow secured their place in the championship on the last day of the 2020-21 season, despite winning just one of their last 15 games. The Rams survived by a point and had dropped into the relegation zone at one point midway through their final game of the season, though they had Sheffield Wednesday's 12-point deduction at the start of the year to thank for their survival. Despite seemingly retaining their place in the second tier, doubts remained over Derby's survival as an investigation continued into their compliance with FFP rules. The EFL eventually admitted defeat and decided not to appeal the decision to hand them a £100,000 fine instead of a points deduction, though the fallout from the case wasn't over yet. As part of the case, Derby were told to resubmit their accounts for 2016, 2017 and 2018 as the EFL continued to look into their FFP compliance. Until their accounts were refiled, Derby would be placed under a transfer embargo, meaning Rooney was unable to sign any new players ahead of the 2021-22 season, something which surprisingly didn't go down too well with the Rams boss. Rooney admitted in an interview recently that he would be unable to field a team for Derby's first game of the championship season against Huddersfield on 7 August. The Rams boss claimed to have just 9 senior players available to him, including just one centre-back, so you'd imagine he'd be wrapping said 9 players in cotton wool before their opener in a few months' time, right? Maybe not. The latest in our long list of Derby County disasters came just this week, as Rooney admitted star midfielder Jason Knight had suffered an injury in training and was facing up to 12 weeks on the sidelines. Seriously, who would be so daft to lunge into a challenge with one of the 9 senior players at the club when they're under a transfer embargo? Oh, it was Rooney. We just don't know what to say anymore. The Derby County banter years don't look like ending anytime soon, and who knows what'll be next on the list.